We join all other Unitarians in the tradition of striking the gong 3 times, once in memory of those congregationists who have come and who have gone before us, once in honor of those with us today, and once for those of the future. And now, Sean. We actually have a video.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay.
And now let us welcome you in with Enter, Rejoice, and Come In.
You want us to stand or can we sit?
You can stand if you can not sit still, and you can stand if you want to stand.
I'm sitting.
We're mindful of age.
Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in.
Good morning. Welcome on this Sunday, April 23rd. I'm Lilene Fifield, your service leader for today. And do know you are welcome here at the Umpqua Unitarian Universalist Congregation. This is a place where you can be yourself, but not by yourself. And whomever you are, whoever you love, however you describe yourself or name the holy, you are welcome here. And we especially welcome those of you who might be here for the first time. And we hope that you'll come again. We also welcome you who have been here before and have returned. We hope that all of you will stay with us for coffee and tea and conversation after the service. That way we can get to know you better. UUUC acknowledges the people who came before us on this land called the Umpqua. Their name graces our congregation and the river that flows through this land. Here for thousands of years, loving this land, living in harmony, the Umpqua tribe are still giving us gifts of action and wisdom. We make this land acknowledgement in recognition of the Umpqua and in beginning atonement for harm done, part of the paths of healing. You have announcements. Announcements in your order of service. Please save that schedule. There are some really important events coming up. In particular, there is the Ally program continuing this Tuesday, the 25th. Dinner's at 5 o'clock, and the program is in your announcements. There's a sign-up sheet on the back table in that corner under your name tags. It has a funny little flower pen. And if you're able to bring food, that would be wonderful. And please sign up. And if you can stay around for cleanup, that would be wonderful too. And you could indicate that. Other announcements in there are the Covenant workshop. Please read it. It's going to be an exciting Unitarian event as we learn more from those who are visiting about covenanting and becoming a closer congregation together. For that event, there's a lunch salad. We ask that you do bring anything else you'd like to balance your lunch with in addition to the salad. But the salad's being put together by the congregation, so we can't tell you what it will be. We're just asking each of you who are so inclined to catch up with JC, waving the sign-up list, and put an item that you might bring for the salad. Perhaps a sliced kiwi or grapes or olives. Who knows what will end up in the salad. So again, please keep the announcements and check out what's in there. Dennis has said he will be the team leader, Reverend Dennis, and Martha can also answer some questions about the Saturday workshop and next Sunday's service. So come, bring your sack lunch. It'll be fun to see what we create. Last item on the announcements is we are at the end of this year's pledge drive. Not ended at the end. So if you've not yet turned in your pledge or made a pledge, there are these wonderful yellow cards. And they also are sitting on the same back table, and there's like a strong box. And after you've filled out and you've put down the amount that you can pledge over the course of the year, drop it in that box and it will go directly to our accountant, and she will take it from there. Thank you. We are able to do much with your contributions, and knowing what they will be helps us plan our budget for next year. We have a lot of appreciation for all the staff and the people who help us put this place in order and the Sunday service together. Particularly want to thank the greeters and Jake Tranter and also Sean Shea. And you'll have a chance to hear some beautiful music soon from Sean Shea. It is at this time that we collect food or donations for the Fish Food Pantry. And if you have brought some food or some money, we'll be passing some baskets around. Maybe Anand can come up and help. They're over here. And just deposit it in the baskets. Know that this is not the offertory for the church. This is money to help those in need of food or shelter or who are ill. And while you're doing that, If you got one of these, please be sure you've turned it off. Thank you. Our sermon presenter today is Dr. Lauren Schroeder. She's going to be speaking about the Holocaust. Can we forgive, but not forget? And she'll be joining me in just a few minutes. We're looking forward to that. But we start our services by lighting our chalice. And I have some words written by Melanie Davis, entitled A Spark of Hope. If ever there were a time for a candle in the darkness, this would be it. Using a spark of hope, we kindle the flame of love, ignite the light of peace, and feed the flame of justice. And now, if you will, please welcome Lauren Schroeder. She's going to be joining me for some opening words.
This is called We Gather to Remember. We gather to remember those who could not grow old and those forced to grow old long before their time.
We gather to mourn and grieve with one another all our losses, the people, the stories, the loved ones, and the futures that could have been.
We gather to do the hard work of facing the difficult realities of our present and our past, where there is conflict, violence, war, and hatred.
We gather to hold space in silence as we try to make meaning of our history and to help us work for peace and justice today.
We gather to rekindle our source of hope for the future. Recognizing in one another our shared humanity, we join in a concerted commitment for a better tomorrow.
And now, please join us in We Are, a video. And thank you, Lauren will be back with us in a little bit.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth, keepers of faith, makers of peace, and and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are one.
Beautiful song. And so appropriate. We move now to our circle of life, remembrance of joys and sorrows and concerns. If you have a candle that you would like to light in expression of a joy or sorrow, concern, I'd like you to come around if you would and form a line across the stage, and one at a time we'll come up, and if you have a spoken candle, please take the microphone, and if not, then we'll acknowledge your silence. I love that hymn. Now is the time when we pass the baskets for our church offerty. Know that we are supported by your voluntary generosity and all who join with us. And without your support, the flame of justice and community and love cannot burn so brightly. So what is given now is gratefully appreciated and will be used for our shared hopes, values, and dreams. For the gifts we have received, know that we are grateful, truly grateful, and we are committed to putting these gifts to make a difference in the world, and we appreciate your gifts. Thank you. And now we have a special treat from Sean. This is an original composition selected by Lauren, entitled Strength and Compassion.
What can I do, my brother, to respond to the madness? What can I say, my sister, to ease the pain? How can I help to heal a world that's so torn to pieces? Give me the strength and compassion, Lord, to give your love today. Give me the strength and compassion, Lord, to give your love today. When I take a look around, I see the world turned upside down. I see brothers being brutal to their brothers. Where is the love that we should have for one another? Now I hope and pray we may see a brighter day. May our children grow up free of fear and hatred, and find a world that and help create a world where all of life is sacred. What can I do, my brother, to respond to the madness? What can I say, my sister, to ease the pain? How can I help to heal a world that's so torn to pieces? Give me the strength and compassion, Lord, to give your love today. Give me the strength and compassion, Lord, to give your love today. In a world torn apart, if we can keep a tender heart and see each other with forgiveness and compassion, from our loving hearts will spring forth loving action. And so with faith and trust that of God in all of us, let's offer a helping hand to heal sight. Let's offer a helping hand to serve a higher purpose. We'll find that our hearts are filled with peace through loving service. What can I do, my brother, to respond to the madness? What can I say, my sister, to ease the pain? What can I do? How can I help to heal a world that's so torn to pieces? Give me the strength and compassion, Lord, to give your love today. Give me the strength and compassion, Lord, to give your love today. Give me the strength and compassion, Lord, to give your love today.
Wow, thank you, Sean. I cannot think of a more beautiful song to have had. It is at this point that I have the pleasure of introducing to you Lauren Schroeder, Dr. Lauren Schroeder. She brings a most interesting and diverse background to her work. She is an ordained minister of the Universal Light Church. She's also known to many of us as a retired chiropractor and a retired registered nurse who chose working with chronically ill patients. Lauren strongly supports the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual needs of all those in her care. So it comes as no surprise that her study of spirituality, for both personal and professional quests, would take her into a deeper exploration of healing. And this includes the removal of karmic patterns through the Akashic Records and her new study and work as a medical intuitive. Lauren has also been studying, she's busy, mental alchemy and manifestation as she is moving into her own higher consciousness awareness. Her intent in all her studies focuses on enhancing the lives of herself and others, and we welcome her to our congregation home. Lauren will be doing for us not only the sermon, but also a meditation and closing later with me. Lauren?
Thank you, Lillian. Hi, everyone. It's so good to see you. The last time I was up here at the pulpit, there was a camera, and you saw me on YouTube. And so that's really sweet to actually have faces and bodies out there. Also, when you came in, you were able to get a card, and these are cards where they're created by Holocaust children in the Holocaust. And there may be more left, so please feel free to take more. So normally, when I stand up here before you and do a sermon, I start with a joke. But this topic didn't deserve a joke. So what I found instead was a poem by a Unitarian minister. Her name is Dr. Reverend Lynn Unger. She wrote this in March of 2020, called Pandemic. What if you thought of it as the Jews consider the Sabbath, the most sacred of times? Cease from travel. Cease from buying and selling. Give up just for now on trying to make the world different than it is. Sing, pray, touch only those to whom you commit your life. Center down. And when your body has become still, reach out with your heart. Know that we are connected in ways that are terrifying and beautiful. Know that our lives are in another's hands. Do not reach out your hands, reach out your heart. Reach out your words. Reach out all the tendrils of compassion that move invisibly where we cannot touch. Promise this world your love for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, as long as we all shall live. So the Holocaust, can we forgive but not forget? When Lilene asked me if I would prepare a sermon for the Holocaust, my initial response to myself was, I don't have time to do this. I don't think I will. Then I started thinking about it. The more I did, I became spiritually moved to create a sermon not about the horrors of the Holocaust, but about the people, the persecuted and the persecutors. What kind of impact could I possibly make to help people open their minds and hearts to something so devastating? For there is always the fear, can it happen again? The number 6 million is the common number of Jewish lives lost in the Holocaust, but there were so many others. Persecuted and murdered included blacks, homosexuals, gypsies, disabled and infirm people, resistance fighters, and Germans opposed to the Nazi regime. Driven by a racist ideology that considered Jews and other minorities to be inferior to the superior German people, the Nazis set out to subjugate and later eliminate them. This genocide of the Jews resulted in the murder of 2/3 of European Jewry. Not only did many go directly to the gas chambers and incinerators, but many were captive in work camps, tortured, starved, succumbed to illness and frostbite from working outside in winter in their thin clothing and often without shoes. Many were forced to march for hours, day after day, often beaten if they did not run these miles on empty stomachs with little flesh on their bones. If someone fell, they were shot. The human spirit to survive, stay alive at all costs, could be a whole discussion in itself. When some were ready to give up, others encouraged them to keep going. What motivates a group of people who historically have been harassed, exiled, murdered, enslaved for millennia to continue to regroup, continue the faith, rebuild the population? I began reading books that I should have read many years ago. What made the greatest impression on me was the resolve of so many people to do whatever it took to stay alive, and the surrender of so many to give up and perish. This became a study in human nature, the survival of the fittest, not only the physically fittest, but the mentally, spiritually, and emotionally fittest. More than 7 decades ago in Auschwitz, a Jewish teenager, Marian Tursky, felt he, quote, had no name, he had nothing but a number, tattooed on his body. At the age of 92, Marian spoke at the annual Holocaust Memorial Ceremony at the United Nations headquarters in New York. He called on the world to express renewed empathy and compassion. Sharing his extraordinary story, he said that the worst part of surviving Nazi death camps was not the extreme hunger, the coldness, or the deteriorating conditions, but the humiliation. Just because you were Jewish, you were treated not like a human being. You were treated like a louse, a bedbug, like a cockroach. What causes a group of people to deny what is happening, to wear blinders when the signs are all around them? What about the Jews, the gypsies, the homosexuals, the blacks who were losing their civil rights more by the day? So many saw the signs and were able to leave before persecution, imprisonment, having their businesses destroyed, their belongings confiscated, their friends and families taken away in the night. But why did others stay? Many thought it would pass. Many thought it couldn't happen to them. Many didn't want to leave their homes and extended families and friends to go into the unknown. Many thought some other country would save them. Then it was too late to leave. Elie Wiesel, in his book The Night, spoke of fear once there could be no denial. Fear came and went by the day, as others were taken away, and yet they still remained in their ghetto home. Eventually they were taken, and there was no more denial. Elie Wiesel also spoke of Moshe, an old poor Jewish man who witnessed the experience of killings, and no one would believe him when he warned them. He begged and pleaded to Elie and his father, but they would not believe such things could possibly happen. No one can tolerate hearing such things and think they might really be happening, nor that they could happen to them or their loved ones. Elie and his father were in the concentration camps, and after some time, being beaten, starved, frozen, and made to do hard labor, Elie realized as he watched his father being brutally abused, he only could feel the pang of hunger and thought about his next piece of bread and bowl of soup. This is how inhumane it became for people. Astonishing when I think of it. How can this happen? How can this be? How can so many turn their backs on such atrocities? How can friends and neighbors suddenly see their friends and neighbors as the enemy, as those to be hated, spat upon, wished dead? I know this is an age-old question. It has happened time and time again. We know that there are only two real emotions, love and fear. Everything else comes from these two emotions. If it is not love, it is fear. And fear is the primary reason one human would and could and did turn against another. Often I have thought, what would I have done? What would I do now if others I know are being persecuted? Would I be brave enough to hide them, to feed them, to fight for them? Could I live with myself if I didn't? And yet it happens at every level. Daily African Americans are harassed, threatened, attacked, and murdered. What have I done to help them? What can I do? What is this sense of powerlessness to speak out, to be willing to stand up against hatred, discrimination, and violence? Recently, I listened to a presentation on NPR radio during the Eugene Downtown Club. The discussion centered around anti-Semitism. There has been a serious acceleration of vandalism, threats, and attacks on Jews and their places of worship in Eugene and many other areas of our country and around the world. Some of the insights presented were about how anti-Semitism has come about. Anti-Semitism is similar to racism. Jews are seen as less valuable, less important, less human than themselves. It is at the core of white supremacy. Jews are considered by some as non-human. And what about the supreme denial by some today who refuse to believe the Holocaust ever happened? Many schools are now teaching classes on the subject, but many are not. Information, knowledge, exposure are important means to prevent this from ever happening again, and yet white supremacy is on the rise. Neo-Nazism is on the rise. People need a scapegoat. They need to feel powerful themselves and within their groups. This is not a sermon about fear. However, how can it be ignored when speaking on such a topic? So many were willing to fall in line to support the leader, the tyrant, who made promises of a better future, better financial situation, once the Jews were removed. They were also threatened themselves if they were to offer assistance to Jews or to speak out against their loss of privileges and lifestyles. Within the acts of violence became justified, attacking the Jews on the streets, spitting on them, calling them names, throwing rocks through their business windows. They were not permitted to frequent Jewish businesses. Jewish children were not permitted to attend public school. And they had curfews that if disobeyed, they were shot. Yes, fear is the greatest manipulator. So who can we blame for this atrocity? Who can we point the proverbial finger at? I would like you to ponder the idea that the persecutor may have been the persecuted. In the concentration camps, many of the German soldiers and guards treated the prisoners horribly, beating them for no reason and without warning, starving them and laughing at them, making them march for days without food, water, proper clothing. Were they possibly the victims of being bullied in their youth by parents, teachers, or peers? But there were others who had compassion and did not abuse the prisoners for their own gratification. Some even took risks to bring food, warn them of impending harshness, keeping father and sons together. I enjoyed reading Anne Frank, The Diary of a Young Girl. Anne was a precious and precocious young girl who evolved into a courageous young woman during her 2.5 years during hiding. Her account offers a fascinating commentary on human courage and frailty and a compelling self-portrait of a sensitive and spirited young woman whose promise was tragically cut short. Anne herself put it the most eloquently when she wrote in her diary, "It's a wonder I haven't abandoned all my ideals. They seem so absurd and impractical. Yet I cling to them because I still believe, in spite of everything, that people are truly good at heart." How can we get to the place of compassion for another who has done you or your loved ones harm? How can we go deep enough to forgive? How much power does hatred have within us? How much power does love have within us? How much emotional repair is possible? What is the difference between those who survived and those who perished in the concentration camps? Many gave up. Sadly, some just before they were liberated. But those who hung on for 2, 3, 4, or more years learned to survive starvation, cold illness, witnessing so much death around them, living with the constant fear that they might be next. Viktor Frankl, in his book, A Man's Search for Meaning, wrote that his love for his wife helped him to continue striving to live. He had no idea if she was alive or dead, but he held her in his heart and his mind, talking to her in his inner dialogue, planning a future together in his mind. He also says that survivors had a purpose, a hope for a future time when they would be liberated and able to return to their lives, their families, their homes, and that they had someone to live for. There were many in concentration camps who questioned God, lost faith in God, were angry with God. And again, there were many who continued to have faith and not blame God for not rescuing them. Many years ago, I was quite shocked to hear my father tell me he no longer believed in God because of the Holocaust. How could God forsake the Jews? How could God allow so many to suffer, to die, and to lose their families? This poses a deep soul-searching kind of question. Did God create the Holocaust? Was it up to God to intervene and stop the massacre? If so, what about all the other massacres that have and are afflicting millions throughout the ages? I can hardly imagine that most people have not given this some personal thought. Elie Wiesel, at the age of 13, was being tutored by Moshe, the beadle, the man who later warned the Jews of his community about the crimes being committed against them. Moshe asked Elie, why did he cry when he prayed? To which Elie did not know exactly why, but he just felt like crying. Then Moshe asked Elie, why did he pray? Why did he live? Why did he breathe? Elie could only answer, I don't know. He was 13. Moshe later explained, every question possessed a power that was lost in the answer. Man comes closer to God through the questions he asks him. Therein lies true dialogue. Man asks and God replies. But we don't understand his replies. We cannot understand them because they dwell in the depths of our souls and remain there until we die. The real answer, Eliezer, you will only find within yourself. Elie asked Moshe, and why do you pray, Moshe? He answered, I pray to the God within me for the strength to ask him the real questions. Thus, you see, we have all the answers within us. If those who choose to turn away from God, from Source and Great Spirit, had asked and listened within while going beyond the fear or the hatred, they may have heard God speak of compassion, oneness, and love. But instead, they looked for the answers outside of themselves, from external sources, such as the fascist leader who led them astray and made false promises. How can we prevent another Holocaust from ever happening again? Can we? Inga Auerbacher spent 3 years between ages 7 to 10 in a concentration camp in Czechoslovakia, where only around 1% in 15,000 children survived. Lamenting the rising wave of anti-Semitism today, Mrs. Auerbacher pleaded for everyone across the world to make good choices. She stated, my hope, wish, and prayer is for every child to live in peace without hunger and prejudice. The antidote to hatred is education. No more genocide, no more anti-Semitism. From a paper called Women in the Holocaust, a study guide, it is written, the Jewish women showed amazing courage during these times, from living in the ghettos to being deported into the camps. Many watched their children die, were separated from their husbands and families, yet continued to survive. The ability of the women to adapt, their capacity to improvise, their bravery, are some of the remarkable phenomena of the Holocaust. Despite being subject to constant humiliation, deprivation, and violence, many women went on to rebuild their lives after the Holocaust. No matter how hard it was, many started new families, studied new occupations, learned to love and trust again, and find happiness. They found the power to prove they were not broken into pieces. Most of those who risked their lives and their families to help hide, feed, and rescue victims were ordinary people. Some acted out of political, ideological, or religious convictions. Some were merely human beings who cared about the people around them and who fought against a tyrannical regime. The United Nations General Assembly resolution called for the establishment of a program of outreach on the subject and measures to mobilize civil society for Holocaust remembrance and education in order to help to prevent future acts of genocide. It has developed an international network of civil society partners and a multifaceted program that includes innovative online educational products for educators, social media, campaigns, student video conferences, and much more. It works to combat Holocaust denial and seeks to promote the stories of survivals. Can the Nazis be forgiven? In my search to find any kind of answer to this question, I found an article in a journal titled The Conversation. The author is Rabbi Yerachmiel Gorelick, a lecturer, philosopher, and traditional Judaism at Colorado State University. Rabbi Gorelick discussed forgiveness from a Jewish perspective. He grew up in Australia, an area with the highest number of Holocaust survivors per capita outside of Israel. He never heard anyone discuss forgiveness of the Nazis. Instead, what prevailed was the question of, what do we do now? The answer was a single-minded determination and commitment to rebuilding a new generation of proud and committed Jews. Rabbi Gorelick discussed forgiveness from a Jewish perspective. In Jewish teaching, the essence of forgiveness occurs when the forgiver allows a healing after the forgiven has undergone a sincere effort to perform teshuvah, meaning repentance or a return. He must examine his actions and engage with the victim satisfactorily. Thus, the reason God deliberately created us imperfect is because through the process of sin and reconciliation, both the forgiven and the forgiven can experience tremendous personal and religious growth. The level of teshuvah that would be necessary to rectify the monstrous Nazi crimes would be enormous. If this were to happen, his murdered victims are no longer alive to even consider granting forgiveness. So, since we are human beings who still have a conscience to discern good from evil, the only conclusion we must come to is that we cannot in any way forgive the Nazis. To think otherwise would be to dishonor the victims of the Holocaust and to degrade our own moral compass. All of the above is from Rabbi Gorelick. However, in May of 2015, Eva Kor, a Holocaust survivor, flew to Germany to testify about her experience in the Auschwitz concentration camp. In a picture taken with her abuser, then 93-year-old Oskar Grauning, many survivors and others were really upset when Eva spoke of forgiveness. What she said to this was, "I want all Nazis to come forward and be prosecuted and stand trial and bear witness to help us and the world with the truth." Her desire was to make Groening travel the country to talk to young neo-Nazis and tell them what he saw and that the Nazi regime should never come back. For Eva Kor, forgiveness does not mean that the perpetrators are absolved of their crimes. She says, "My forgiveness has nothing to do with the perpetrator, has nothing to do with any religion. It is my act of self-healing, self-liberation, and self-empowerment. I had no power over my life up to the time that I discovered I could forgive. And still, I do not understand why people think it's wrong. When a victim chooses to forgive, they take the power back from their tormentors. It is their choice." Soon, all Holocaust survivors will be gone. The greatest memorial we can give them is to educate ourselves, our children and communities, about the dangers of racism, hatred, and violence. It is imperative we continue to acknowledge the atrocities of World War II and of all wars, teaching peace, love, forgiveness, and gratitude. We must spread the light into the world, one person at a time. As Lori Ladd, a spiritual teacher, expressed in a meditation a few years ago, the light has already won. I hold that thought and image when I allow fear to seep in. I hope this will encourage many of you to do the same. Thank you. I am doing a meditation. Okay. She says we need a meditation. Thank you for being such a lovely, attentive audience. I know this was a long sermon. So let's start a meditation. Become comfortable in your seat. Take in a deep breath into your belly and let it out slowly as you drop your shoulders, releasing tension in your face. Take another deep breath and do the same, noticing any areas of tension and releasing them with your out-breath. Inhale through your nose, imagining that you are inhaling up through the bottoms of your feet. Begin inhaling a beautiful candy apple red. Let this red surge through your entire body. Every time you inhale, you're like a pump. You just pump each of the colors upwards and inside you. Next, imagine, think, and feel the vibration of orange. Light, lovely, rich orange. Your entire body fills with orange. Now think about the energy and brilliant yellow of the sun. Inhale the yellow of the sun into the bottoms of your feet. It surges through you as well. Then shift to the most beautiful shade of green that is right for you. Pump green up through the bottoms of your feet. Bring a deep, deep blue, the vibration, the energy, and the color of blue through your entire body. Roll purple up through the bottoms of your feet, letting it fill you. Royal, royal purple. The brilliance of white, the crown of who you are, surges from the soles of your feet up through your entire body to your crown. Now imagine and feel violet flames, very comfortable violet flames inside of your physical body and around you, burning off the old, all that's no longer good for you, any negativity. It transforms and transmutes it as violet. Imagine or visualize a sparkle, a brilliant, brilliant white sparkle of stars in every physical cell of your body. It shines out in all directions. Now allow yourself to feel and sense the preciousness of shimmering golden energy completely filling you. Allow your crown at the top of your head to open. If you will, shoot up as high as you possibly can imagine into the universe. The universe taps in and notices you in a different way. It meets and matches your new vibration and descends down into your physical body and your energy field and back into the earth as you send down your roots. Take in one more breath, a cleansing breath. And please take this few moments to go into silence. Thank you very much. And come back. And do we have time to take any questions or responses? Is this the time for that?
Yes, we certainly have some time for that.
I recognize two types of forgiveness. There's the unforgiven or the unrepented and the repented.
Thank you.
I have a personal experience that I would like, that you've certainly brought to my mind. When I was very young, right after the war, my uncle came back from service and he brought his German bride with him. One night, after my parents and everyone had gone to bed, she was still up in the kitchen at a table, and she had a picture of a little girl in front of her and a letter. And my brother and I sat down to talk to her. As I said, I was very young. And we started asking her about the little girl, and she said it was her daughter. She was about 5 or 6 years old. And as we talked and asked her questions, she said, I have a story I want to tell you. And she said, I think it's important for children to know this. And she said, when I was 16, my mother and I went to the airport in, it wasn't in Berlin. Anyway, they were there to do a deed. And the airport was extremely crowded. And her mother said to someone, why are there so many people here? And they said, oh, Hitler is arriving, and everyone wants to see him. And she said her mother turned to her and said, let's go home. I don't want to be here when that bastard arrives. Unfortunately, she was overheard. And a few days later, the Gestapo arrived at their apartment. And my aunt said that she had just stepped outside with a bucket of water because she was mopping. And they came up to her and said, does Mrs. So-and-so live here? And she said, yes, she's my mother. And they said, we want to talk to her. And she said, what do you want to talk to her about? And I'll try to get through this faster. They wound up saying, if she doesn't come out, we will come in and take her. We just have some questions. And my aunt said, remember now she was 16, if you take one step up on this porch, I will throw this bucket of water on you. They took the step, she threw the water, they were not interested in her mother anymore, and they took her. Oh. She wound up being put in it wasn't a concentration camp, it was a prison for people who were against. And so she said she was there a year. She woke up one morning and the girl next to her had hung herself in the cell next to her. After 6 months, she was taken to the warden, and the warden pushed a piece of paper toward her and said, sign this and you could go home. And it was a loyalty to Hitler. Mm-hmm. And she still had not learned her lesson. And she pushed it back to her and said, you can put that in your pipe and smoke it. She went back to prison for another 6 months, and she said when she went to the warden this time, she had learned her lesson, and when the paper was put for her, she signed it. And by the way, she did have a child while she was in prison. A child, the little girl that was in the picture, and she was the child of a German soldier that had been sent to her cell. So the story ended, though. She met my uncle. She came to the United States. We did not see her often at all until my uncle died and we went to the memorial. And the last I heard, she had returned to Germany to be with her daughter.
Thank you for that story. And there were so many who did resist. And I'm reading a book now called The Resistance Women, I think it's called. A hard book to read, but there's a lot of information on that about the resistance that did occur.
I won't go into my whole story, but in my own experience, in 1944, I was 8 years old, and we were in Florida because my father is a psychiatrist, and the Army and the Air Force sent all their psychiatrists to the East Coast to receive the soldiers back from opening the camps. So I heard them talking, and my experience of it, as I have always felt that war was mine, I had my first visitation that I can remember, and it was my grandfather, Grandpa Hackman, and I said, "Grandpa, we are German. What do we do now? How do we help?" And he just said, "It's the way you live." And he played his violin for me. And when I realized I never actually heard him play a violin, but I made an experience of it out of myself, that my life would be the answer to that question. What do we, who are German, do now?
Thank you, JC. That's beautiful. That's who you are.
Anyone else?
The story that you told of the woman who chose to forgive, and what she said about why she was forgiving really spoke to me, that she was not doing it to relieve her tormentors of their burden. She was doing it to relieve herself.
Right.
Forgiveness is something that releases us, because if we're waiting for the other person to repent, then we're putting the power in their hands. And we're still their slave, really. And understanding that we have a choice still, even though it's a hard choice, puts the responsibility back in our domain to forgive for ourselves. We're letting go of the need to see that person punished before we can go on with our life, before we can be free. So we're deciding, I'm going to walk out of that prison, that the prison of our own attachment to seeing that person punished, because that person may not, they still have their free will, and they may not choose to repent, at least while they're alive. And so, what choice do we want to make?
So forgiveness really takes the victimhood away. She didn't have to be a victim of that anymore. Beautiful. Thank you, Sean. Donna? Should we make this the last? Lillian?
I think it'll be a perfect last. I just want to thank you for bringing to our attention the forgiveness part, because that hasn't been part of the equation for so many years. And therefore it has hung in the hearts of so many people and have been just a darkness that has stayed. The forgiveness will bring the light to it. So just to introduce forgiveness, I think will help a lot of people maybe, turn that around so they can again walk into the light instead of holding on to this. And yes, and I think it will also help us to not ever let it happen again.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think we need to stop.
Socrates said that no one believes themselves to be evil until they know better. Therefore, evil is ignorance.
Thank you.
Lauren. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. I'm standing here debating on whether I can make a comment also. Let's go to the hymn. Thanks, Dana. I'm going to go ahead and do it, Lauren. Thank you so much for introducing forgiveness in. I think many of us, certainly in this country, feel untouched by the Holocaust. And we forget that in our own history we have multiple reasons to seek out forgiveness within ourselves. It starts with the indigenous people that we called Native Americans, and we try to do some atonement for that. But then there are the African Americans, the Chinese, the Japanese, and most recently we've been talking about LGBTQ people. And if you question something just that simple, you have to remember that just not too long ago, all of us LGBTQ people were considered sinful and mentally sick and abnormal and far other worse words than that, subject to shock therapy, locked away. So none of us in this country, though we seem often to think we were saved from the battles of the Holocaust and the fallout and all of that. But we have our own ways in which to learn to do amends. So thank you for giving me that personal. And yes, Dana, we do have a video. So please join us now with the YouTube choir, UU choir rather, singing Building a New Way. A great video.
We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. We can feed our every need. Every need. We can feed our every need. Every need. We can feed our every need. Start with
Lauren had selected some closing words. Shall I read them? She gave us, as we reflect on the lives of all who have been lost, remember this. The purpose of humanity is to forgive others and to forgive ourselves, to love others and to love ourselves. Fill yourself with love and light every day, and the world will be a brighter place. Thank you, Lauren, so much. And we extinguish the cellos now, and words for doing that are, across the distance, the light within me shines, sending love to all. Across the distance, your light is fuel that warms me and helps to keep my own light burning. Together, we keep the flame of community burning bright. Please join us now for Go Lift It Up.
You're still being lifted up. When the support comes out from under you, that's it. But that's not only you. We're all that way. Really? I was just watching you yesterday.